Nico Kleynhans here on CCFm 107.5. Time for us to join Nico Kleynhans. And thank you very much for coming through to our studios this morning, Nico.
Good morning. My role is to be a watchdog. And to do that, I have to warn and I hope to protect. And I do so to try and safeguard listeners. Now, many of the comments that come into me are what guides these morning sessions. But it means I often have to speak about bad news. That doesn't mean we have to be affected by bad news. This is one of the times this week that I was at a loss for words. A listener gets herself into a situation where she's overwhelmed by debt. She appeals to a debt counselor for help. They do what they have to do. They get everything set up, and she starts making payments. For 6 months, she pays this particular organization money. The problem is, for 6 months, they keep the money and they don't hand it over. So she gets a message from her bank the other day saying that they've cancelled the agreement with the debt counselor. They haven't received any money, and she's now got 24 hours to resettle the debt all over again. Now, obviously, in reality, they don't really expect the money in 24 hours, but the language they are using is causing fear. And what I find many listeners don't understand, there is a difference between somebody who does a debt review, who does a debt consolidating. They use various other terms to describe the services that they offer. With one exception, all of them are going to get you deeper into debt. Particularly be careful about those people who offer to lend you money against the security of your motor car. You are going to burn your fingers with those companies unless you read the rules very, very carefully. So what I'm hoping you're going to get out of this segment, check if you're under debt review. Make sure that the money is being paid over, and make sure that you are not going to find out in 6 or 7 months' time that you are now deeper in debt than you thought you actually were. Then I want to talk about Eskom. Now, last week, while we were at level 6 load shedding, one particular power station went off the grid. And it went off the grid because one staff member opened up a tank and let unpurified water into that particular tank. Minister Gordhan uses the word sabotage and has very strong words. Mr. De Ruyter doesn't want to use the word sabotage. But whatever happens, I want to know why that particular employee has not been suspended. Because he alone caused one level of load shedding on his own by doing something that he knew was wrong, and the whole country suffers as a consequence. In fact, my problem with Eskom generally is even where they have video footage, which the authorities admit they have, of people doing wrong, still there is no prosecution. And therefore, the whole country is held to ransom. And I'm going to come back about what we can do about that. Then I want to touch on medical aid, because this is now beginning to concern me. I'm on chronic medication. My medical aid insists that I use Pharmacy Direct. I have no choice. I have to use Pharmacy Direct for all my chronic medication. Should I choose not to do it, I have to pay 25% of my chronic medication costs. So this month, they failed to deliver one of my tablets. I asked them why by email. 48 hours later, they acknowledge that I have put in a query, and they tell me they will speak to the pharmacist. So I telephone them, and it's one of these, your calls are very important. 12 minutes later, I get through to somebody who tells me she will speak to the pharmacist. A week goes by, 2 more emails go out. Every time they will speak to the pharmacist. I have now run out of this tablet, which means I have to go and buy out of my pocket. Now, my problem is that my medical aid society has formed a cozy relationship with Pharmacy Direct. I don't know what money passes between them and what they pay for the service, but I don't get the service that I should be getting. And Pharmacy Direct has ultimately just indirectly sent me an email which shows they are deleting my emails without reading it. And I have evidence of that. Now, my problem is they're governed by a regulator. I read the regulator's reports. The first half of it, she tells us every year what she's not doing. She's still in her job. She hasn't run a training session in nearly 4 years. It's part of her job, and she gets paid hundreds of millions of rand. She's still spending the budget, but she's not doing the training. She's not calling the regulatory meetings. If we lay a complaint, she doesn't process the complaints. So the medical aids get away with it because they know the regulator is not capable of doing things. So what do we now do as members of the public? Well, when we are dealing with a government function, the only weapon we have, and it is an important weapon, is next time it gets to the election, we've got to make sure that not only our families, our acquaintances, and those people with whom we have influence, that we go and vote. Because our system counts the vote we actually make, and it then has a proportional system. So we can, in fact, punish parties in numerous ways simply by pitching to vote. And I encourage you to start mobilizing people right now. It is our only way of fighting back, and we do need to take power back into our hands. As for businesses, be careful if you're trying to get your debt settled. Most of those people who are offering you tools are there to make money and to make your problem worse. Be careful what service you're actually paying for. It may not really help you at all. Have a good day.